All right, we're back. So, I'm doing this episode without Justin today, but we will be back on Sunday. We're going to break down week 8 of the NFL. Today, and actually yesterday, we got some unbelievable news. I'm not sure if most Sixers fans understand really what's happened over the last 3 weeks. I know everybody is obviously excited about the hiring of Doc Rivers. There's so much that's going on with Doc Rivers, including the assistant coaches that he's brought on. But yesterday, it was reported that Daryl Morey will be signing a 5-year deal with the Sixers. Now, Daryl Morey is the former GM of the Houston Rockets. I'll get into what that means, what he's done, but just know before I start, you should be very excited about this. Daryl Morey is an analytics guy. Sam Hinkie, who we all loved, didn't quite work out the way we wanted to, but we did all love. Sam Hinkie comes from Daryl Morey's tree. Now, Daryl Morey is the guy that basically started the small ball trend in the NBA. He said if it's not a layup, it's a 3-point shot, you get more points from a 3 than a 2. And if it's not an easy bucket, you take the 3. So we've seen in Houston over the last couple years, aside from helping turn James Harden into a superstar, and we'll get into that as well, he is the guy that has spread the floor out and made, one of the most offensive his mind is offensively driven, and a lot of teams play the way that Daryl Morey had constructed the Houston Rockets. So to me, this makes the Doc Rivers hire way more credible. I'm going to break this all down for you guys. So a lot of people wanted to see Elton Brand get his chance as well with his guys and stay and do what he wanted to do. Elton Brand will be staying. Now him and Morey will be making moves together. And as we've seen over the last couple years, neither of these guys are really afraid to pull the trigger and try to acquire as much talent as possible. Morey's been doing it for years in Houston, and Elton Brand has made moves for Tobias Harris. He's made moves for Jimmy Butler, and he's tried to continue to make moves to make this team a championship contender, which they have not been for the past couple years. So I thought, initially, that Doc may want to see what Ben and Embiid can do together. And my thinking's starting to change on this, and I'll tell you why. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to happen before the season. I don't think it's going to happen before the season because you have to, just the way the team's constructed and how you hire Doc Rivers, you have to give Ben another season to show you if he's willing to shoot or not. Now, like I said when we started this, Daryl Morey was a huge part of creating how teams run their offense in the NBA today. A higher percentage 3-point shot does more for your offense than anything other than a point-blank layup. He's created what's called Morey ball, which is a play on money ball, which Billy Beane, as we know, famously used constructing the Oakland Athletics in baseball. He's a hell of an analytics guy, and it's worked for him for the most part in Houston. Now, his philosophy is basically you spread the floor, you take 3-point shots. The Rockets had that. They had it for a couple years. They had Chris Paul with them one year. 2018, you have to remember that Chris Paul, James Harden, and those Houston Rockets with Clint Capella took the Warriors, the Kevin Durant-led Warriors, and were smacking them up and down the court, took a 3-1 lead on them. Chris Paul got injured. And if not for that injury, the Rockets up 3-1, it's hard to think that the Rockets wouldn't have won that series. And let's not forget, in Game 7 of that series, that team went 0 for 27 from 3 to lose that game. So you have a Warriors team, and this was a dominant Warriors team. This is a Warriors team that swept LeBron James when LeBron had arguably his best playoff run ever. Now, we didn't have Kyrie Irving with him. Kyrie was sitting on the bench injured with the Celtics. But that playoff run, LeBron had 2 game-winning shots, one against Indiana and one against Toronto. I think the Toronto one ended the series and the Indiana one was like game 5 or 6 or vice versa. And then in the finals, LeBron James had a 50-point outing in game 1, famously when J.R. Smith got the rebound and forgot that the game was tied. So they're 0 for 27 in the last quarter and a half against the Rockets. They end up losing the series. In light of everything that's happened in the past year, we remember Daryl Morey for some different reasons now. One was his comments with China, LeBron James coming at him, and then he makes a trade for Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook trade did not pan out at all. It was not a good fit for the Rockets, especially the way that they wanted to construct a team. Now, you have to take into consideration there was reports that Daryl Morey did not want to trade Chris Paul. He was a huge Chris Paul guy. Apparently, he was the biggest Chris Paul guy in the organization. He's an analytics guy, like I said, so he was not willing to bring in a guy like Russell Westbrook who shoots 25% from 3. So we remember Daryl Morey, and we start to remember the China comments in the last year with the Houston Rockets. He created, again, what is today's NBA. He did it better than anybody else, and him and Brand are not afraid at all to acquire talent. So it's very interesting because we've been getting on Josh Harris for years now, and almost by accident, the Sixers have turned the most toxic front office and coaching situation in the league to one of the best combinations in the span of 3 weeks, and it's crazy. So I'm going to break down these coaches for you. I'm going to break down Daryl Morey for you. I'm going to break down what that means for Ben Simmons. So not only right now do we have one of the top 3 guys, front office guys, in my opinion, in the entire league. Again, I can't begin to explain for people who don't know the trend that Daryl Morey has say and the influence he's had in the NBA at this point. But he brought in Doc Rivers, and Doc Rivers has first and foremost coming with him is Sam Cassell. Sam Cassell was a guard, 15-year pro, hell of an NBA player, won 3 NBA championships, I believe, Rockets and Celtics, I believe. He won an NBA coach, so immediately 2 guys you respect. Doc has been coaching, a head coach in the league for a long time, won a championship with the Celtics. And Doc also, under him, hired Dan Burke. Now, Dan Burke is a longtime assistant for the Pacers, 19 years with the Pacers, and he is credited to basically being the guy that constructed that defense over there. And the Pacers defense over the years has been very good. Dave Jorger is also on the staff. He's the former Grizzlies and Kings head coach. Now, he just got fired from the Kings, but the Kings have been miserable for a long time. He missed the playoffs 3 years in a row, but last year they did have the best record, franchise record, since 2005, 2006. So you got 3 guys now on this staff that have either been head coaches in the NBA or should have been head coaches. In the case of Sam Cassell, Doc Rivers was rumored to have been bringing him along if Sam Cassell did not get a head coaching job. So there's a lot of basketball minds now on this coaching staff. There's guys that know how to teach. There's guys that know how to adjust. There's guys that command respect. And then in the front office, you have the analytics guy. So let's talk about what that means for the 76ers roster and the 76ers in general. Because of this Daryl Morey hiring, the level of accountability for Ben Simmons in particular just skyrocketed. Because guess what? Although the coaches are coaching based, and I'm sure they're going to want to see Doc Rivers, especially what he can get out of Ben and JoJo together. And remember, Doc Rivers also coached Tobias Harris in when he was with the Clippers. Tobias Harris had his best season. So not only do you have the coach guys, you have the analytics guys. And if Ben Simmons doesn't get traded before the season, it's because they want to see if he can shoot. And Morey is all about floor space and shooters. He wants to shoot threes or he wants to get to the rim. So I would imagine based on that hiring, we were all talking about, are they going to move Embiid? Are they going to move Simmons? You didn't know with Doc Rivers. You know with Daryl Morey, if there's one guy he's going to move, it's probably not going to be Joel Embiid, and I'll tell you why. So if Ben Simmons starts this season for the Sixers, doesn't shoot, or he starts shooting threes, let's say, and can't shoot over 30 to 33%. I can guarantee you if we're 40, 50, 60 games in, unless he's showing improvement in that area and the Sixers offense is running efficiently, he's going to be the guy that goes. Based on these front office and these coaching moves, it is win now time. They are looking to win a championship in the next 2 years. They're not looking to make a deep playoff run. They're not looking to get to the finals. They want to win an NBA championship. The process is over, okay? If we can't execute the offense that we want to execute, Embiid will be here and Simmons will be gone. So the reason I know this is because he is an analytics guy. He's taking a look at what's going on around the league, which in part he helped construct. So you take a look at the most successful teams in the past couple years, the teams that have been to the finals, made deep playoff runs, won championships. And the common theme is that you have first of all, the floor is completely spread on any team. You have a dominant big man who can play all NBA defense and a superstar guard that can go get you a bucket at any point, and then an array of guards, whether they happen to be all-stars, they specialize in three-point shooting, they're 3-and-D guys. So you have a point guard or a shooting guard that can get you a bucket at almost any time. You have a dominant and highly efficient offensive big man that specializes in defense. So you can both shoot, you can run the pick and roll. So go down the list, right? So championship rosters and championship contenders. The Lakers, LeBron, as we know, can do anything. Anthony Davis is elite on both sides of the ball. The Nuggets have Jokic and Murray. Jokic is a dominant offensive big man, can play a little bit defense, a little bit of defense. He can go get you a bucket anytime you want. You saw it in the playoffs, 40-point games, 50-point games. When Murray was on, just about unstoppable. The Jazz were up 3-1 against the Nuggets. They have Donovan Mitchell, who was putting up 40, 50-point games as well. Rudy Gobert, guard, big. Miami was in the finals. They had Jimmy Butler, all-star guard/forward, Bam Adebayo. Toronto, when they won last year, they had Kawhi and Siakam. This year, they still had Siakam, offensive and defensive guy, and they have an array of guards that can shoot. Their leaders, Kyle Lowry, point guard, big man. The reason I bring this up is because you say, well, the Sixers do have that, right? They have point guard, Ben Simmons, big man. Ben Simmons is not the same type of point guard. Ben Simmons is an elite passer, an elite defender, but there is no point in the game where you're passing Ben Simmons the ball, especially in the fourth quarter, and you're like, hey, Ben, go get us a bucket. You can do that with Jimmy Butler. You can do that with Donovan Mitchell. You can do that with Jamal Murray. You can do that with LeBron James. So all these teams had a guard that can get you a bucket at any time, or a couple of them, and a dominant big man. One of the reasons that the Celtics got knocked out of the playoffs by the Heat is they didn't have a big man to compete with the other big men in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. The teams that did compete had that. Another example, the Clippers. Two forwards that were great defenders and should be great offensive players, regardless of what happened to Paul George over the playoff run, but they didn't have that dominant big man. Their best big man was a 6'8", 6'9" forward and just was overmatched. So, the Celtics got outmatched. They have a bunch of forwards and guards, no physical presence. And Toronto took them to 7 games with basically just one all-star big man. So one of the issues with the Sixers as well, obviously, has been injuries over the year. We started our playoff run without Ben Simmons. I am a believer that regardless of whether Simmons was playing in that series or not, I don't think the Sixers are coming out of that series. They didn't have a true point guard, and their best one-on-one guy was Tobias Harris at that point. It is Tobias Harris. As far as a guard forward goes, you can't keep going down to Embiid for one-on-ones all game, and he's not very good passing out of the double team or feeling the double team coming. So the reason this doesn't work, and it's every single year, is that there's no space on the floor. So we can run up and down during the season. One guy can go on the court, one guy goes off the court. When it gets down to the playoffs, it's about matchups. And when the defense only has to guard forward guys because your point guard hands the most, Ben Simmons, won't shoot the ball. You can sag off, you clog the paint, you force Joel out of it. He becomes a three-point shooter. You don't have enough space for Harris to work. It's a complete mess every single year when the Sixers get to the playoffs. So, the guys you have outside of Embiid even at this point are not elite three-point shooters. Josh Richardson's one of your three-point guys. He's not a high percentage three-point guy. You're trying to make Matisse Thybulle into a three-point shooter. Harris is more likely to go one-on-one and kind of run around screens and try to go get a layup or maybe, just a quick jump shot. But he's not a guy that's going to sit on the three-point line and you expect him to get going. So if you remember, the year that the Sixers did get very close to the finals and lost on a Kawhi Leonard shot, they had a ton of space on the floor, and they were actually taking Ben Simmons out in late game situations. You had J.J. Redick on the floor. You had Ersan Ilyasova on the floor, who saved us and hit a bunch of big shots throughout some games. You had Marco Bellinelli, who I think sent a game into overtime during that playoff run on a fadeaway, sideline shot. So all these guys were high percentage three-point shooters. Next season, it didn't work out for you. You didn't have guys that could spread the floor. So if you think Ben Simmons is staying on this team, if they get into the season and he decides that he still doesn't want to shoot, I'm going to tell you he's getting traded. So speaking of trades and what makes sense, we're hearing all these rumors compounded by this hiring of Daryl Morey. Is James Harden coming here? Does he want to get Chris Paul back? There's a trade that was suggested between the Celtics and Indiana and a three-way trade. And at the end of the day, what we all have to realize is we've been put in a particularly bad situation with this Horford contract. And none of these moves can have any effect on anything until you get rid of this contract. Somebody said he traded away Capella, bro. He doesn't value the big. It's not that he doesn't value the big. Capella is a limited offensive player. So in his ideology of spreading the floor, Capella does not fit. Now, I know he wanted to go to small ball, but the idea of small ball was to spread the floor. If you have guys that can run the floor and also can shoot the ball, there's no reason to trade a Joel Embiid. So thank you for that comment. But Capella was traded for a different reason. So you have to move this Horford contract. People have to realize the only way you're probably going to be able to move this Horford contract, whatever, nobody's going to gift you, hey, I'll take it, unless you give them something in return. So you're going to have to package him with a Ben Simmons and maybe involve a third team. You're going to have to clear up that space in order for whoever you bring in to also get some shooters along with that. So this Horford contract is the first priority for that front office. And it's not going to be an easy contract to get rid of. So we're not just going to have a trade happen within the next couple days where it's just going to blow up the whole league. It's going to take a little bit. And Doc Rivers maybe will be able to start the season with this lineup and get enough out of Horford where it looks like he could be an asset to a rebuilding team as a veteran. That's going to be the ultimate goal. Maybe at the beginning of the season. Maybe if we have some coaching, some accountability, some plays drawn up, when Horford does get his playing time, he doesn't look quite as bad. Some of that has to do with the lack of spacing on the floor and Horford being out at the three-point line shooting threes as well, but we'll get back to that. Daryl Morey is also going to have, which is coming up in the next couple weeks, and this will be a play and maybe involve some trades at this point. The NBA draft's coming up. Daryl Morey has a history of basically trying to get the best offensive three-point shooter that he can find. So you can bet there's going to be a decent pick coming in the back end of that first round, and then they have an early second round pick. If they can land two shooters, great. If you think you're going to trade someone, maybe you try to find the replacement. But again, big thing is you got to find a way to trade that Horford contract. We have 1 first-round pick. I think we have 5 second-round picks. So there's going to be a team willing to take that and maybe build some assets. And Justin and I will get to the draft on Wednesday, and we'll break some of that down as well after our football Sunday coming up. So let's evaluate some of these rumors and these potential trades for the 76ers. So the first thing, a couple things everyone's talking about. First thing is a lot of people are talking about Ben Simmons for someone like a Bradley Beal. Now, I do that in a second because Bradley Beal is a guy that's shown you that he can get 50 points any given night. He's on the Wizards. It doesn't get we don't see it a lot, but Bradley Beal, trust me, is an elite offensive player. I don't think that's going to happen. It's been rumored that the Sixers have been going after him, but I just don't see Washington, if anything, letting go of them. Washington's already in a rebuild. He's the best piece. John Wall might be coming back. I think it's more likely they try to trade John Wall, get what they can, and try to build around Bradley Beal. I also don't think that you're going to see the 76ers get James Harden. I know it's been rumored. Daryl Morey comes over. Everybody's talking about it. James Harden is the best offensive guard and maybe the best offensive player if you put aside KD, Michael Jordan. And it's a fact. James Harden is averaging 33 plus per game over the past couple years. There was months where he was averaging 37. He had 3 or 4 50-point games in the same week. James Harden gets to the line 20 times a game. It doesn't make sense, regardless of what the Rockets do, to trade James Harden to anybody. He's an MVP. I know there's a lot of people that don't like James Harden. His usage rate's really high. He dribbles a lot, but James Harden can get any shot on the floor at any given time. I don't think any team that still thinks they're in contention is trying to trade a James Harden type of player. There's only a couple of them in the league, and the only other guy even remotely close to James Harden offensively is Kevin Durant, and we'll see how he comes back from an injury. So I can't imagine the Rockets are going to do that. So not only is he a great scorer as well, he is a phenomenal passer. I know his usage rate's really high. He gets labeled a ball hog, but he averages about 9 assists per game. Ben Simmons averages 8.5 assists per game. So you're getting about the same output. I will say Ben Simmons, when you watch him, is obviously a better passer and sees the floor better, but that doesn't do much for you if you're not shooting the basketball. So the rumored trade that I want to discuss, because I think it's fascinating, is between the Sixers, the Pacers, and the Celtics. Now, Sixers fans, and rightfully so, seem to be very hesitant to even begin discussions about trading with the Celtics because Danny Ainge has finessed the Sixers more times than I really care to talk about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back in about 2 minutes, and we'll discuss the trade, the biggest potential of a trade that could happen between the 76ers, the Boston Celtics, and the Indiana Pacers. We'll be right back. All right, Aaron Barrison back with you guys. Big facts. So, what we were doing when I just left a second ago was discussing the potential trade that's been rumored. And again, just a rumor, makes sense, though, in my opinion. It's more likely that there's three teams involved in any scenario where you're able to get rid of the Horford contract. So, the beginning of this rumored trade starts with Victor Oladipo, who is on the last year of his contract. He'll become an unrestricted free agent after this year. And it has been rumored that he does not want to stay in Indiana, although he has not said that publicly. Now, if you lose Oladipo, you're more than likely interested in going into a rebuild mode. You do have some pieces still. Malcolm Brogdon's there, Miles Turner's there, but Miles Turner is also part of this trade. So Oladipo's 27 years old. He's due a max contract, and he's going to get it from someone. But again, there's reports he doesn't want to stay in Indiana. So they're going to have to work something out if they get an idea that he doesn't want to. They tried to have discussions with Victor in February. It wasn't very lengthy, and both parties decided to revisit it at a later time, and it's never really a good sign when it starts and just ends abruptly. So Oladipo is probably going to be on the move, and he's a hell of a shooting guard. Now, the Celtics are guard and forward heavy. And the Hayward situation has not worked out for them. He just hasn't been the same player since his leg injury. He got injured again last year for a little bit of time. He's never really would get into a rhythm. He's a nice player, but mixed in with all those forwards and guards, it's really hard Justin just called me. My internet went out. I'm not sure where I left off. Give me just a sec here. Anybody watching, where did my internet cut off at? If you could help me out, I'll finish my thought. No biggie. So, we were talking about the other scenario in case the Sixers decide that they just don't want and don't want to trade within the conference. So the other option for the 76ers All right, we'll try this one more time. If it cuts out again, we'll have to figure out another time to do this. So the other options for the 76ers, if they don't want to trade within the conference, they don't want to trade to their rivals because they've been fleeced by many times. I'm telling you, Daryl Morey does not care about that because of fleeced, and he believes he's the best GM. But the other scenario is the 76ers going after Chris Paul. Now, Chris Paul has been as impressive taking out Golden State if he was healthy. He took OKC last year, a team that was supposed to have a top 5 pick, and brought them to the playoffs, and actually took the James Harden-led Rockets, or I'm sorry, the Kevin Durant-led Golden State Warriors to 7 games. I'm sorry, I'm talking about Chris Paul. So Chris Paul this year took the Houston Rockets with James Harden to 7 games, and almost won. They lost by 2 that last game. Just a lack of experience with the young guys, realistically. And basically, Chris Paul, Steven Adams, a bunch of young guys. He was so good this year that he probably should have gotten some MVP consideration. Not win it, but been considered. So Paul has been under Morey in Houston, and he's played with Doc Rivers and the Clippers. And the Sixers simply do not have a true point guard. And Chris Paul is as true of a